Phyllis, how does it feel to be the Golden Environment Prize winner this year?
It's a very good feeling because in Kenya our work was not really appreciated that much when we were fighting for the community, telling them about a right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. Most of the names that were tagged to us is like we are anti-development. But winning this prize validates the work that we've been doing. But not only that, because it also gives a chance for our community to fight for justice. Because you cannot fight for justice if you are disempowered economically. And this big prize gives us a chance to go to court and fight for what is right, that is accountability for what happened and justice for the community.
What was your local community like back in 2008?
The community was very peaceful. Most of the people in the community worked in the industrial area, but the water was clean, the soil was clean. Some people had some small fish they were keeping in their yards. Some people had chicken that they were rearing inside their houses. So in 2008, life was still good until around mid-2008 when the smelter began its operations, and then things started changing in the community.
So what were the first signs that started making you worry about the situation? You were also working for this company yourself.
Yes, I had started working also, and the first thing that really made me to start worrying was the fact that my son also fell sick. But even when my son was sick and we were trying to find out what was wrong, there was a lot of things also that were going wrong in the community. For example, some of the iron sheets that were on the roof in the homesteads, they were getting corrosion holes because of the acid rain that was pouring from the chimneys of the smelter. We noticed that the chickens that would eat from the soil and the wastewater that was being passed in the community, the chickens, all of them died. So those were some of the first things that really alarmed us about what was going on in the community.
Back then you were more like an ordinary citizen, but then something happened and you started taking the path of an activist. So what kind of a mental process was it?
At first, when my son, I was told concretely that my son was having lead poisoning, that was a moment where I was very angry. I was very angry at the Kenyan system. I was angry at my employers at that time who had not told me that this could happen to my child. I have only one child, so it's very precious to me. So just being told that someone could have prevented this, they knew that this would happen to him and they never bothered to tell me or warn me about it. That got me very frustrated and very angry. But after that, it was more of concern about the other children. My son was lucky. He got treatment early. But the other children have suffered for 5 years without treatment, despite the fact that we did blood tests and we gave the government the test to show them that these children were getting lead poisoning from the smelter. Still no one acted for 5 years until last year is when they shut down the smelter. So my thought process graduated from anger to concern to frustration at what the refusal of government to act to protect its own people.
So what started to happen? Because you founded quite quickly also an NGO, an organization to fight for the area and people.
Not very quickly, actually. By 2012, we didn't have an organization. We were just doing our public demonstrations like every other citizen. What we knew is that the new constitution gave us a right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. And we wanted to ensure that this was actualized for the community. But it was in 2012 actually when we were arrested by the state and charged in court that we decided quickly that we need to register an organization so that they don't say we are illegal. We were worried because if they discovered we didn't have an organization, it would be worse for us. So actually it is in 2012 that we then founded the NGO. Yeah, but we had started the struggle in 2009.
So what kind of a process was it to start the NGO? What kind of networks had you developed by then?
Okay, up until 2012, when we were arrested, we really did not get much support from anyone because it was just a poor community. We had nothing. It's just poor people, a lot of injustice. And actually we called our campaign Tuna Sauti. Tuna Sauti means that the only thing we have is our voice. Okay? Because we didn't have resources. We had nothing except our voices. But we said we were going to continue using our voices to continue talking until someone finally had our outcry. It was very unfortunate when we were arrested in 2012. It was a very confusing time for me. I had not been arrested ever before that day. And it was strange for me to sleep in the police cells and to get harassed by the policemen and to be called all these bad names. And then when we were arraigned in court, it was, for me at that point, it was very embarrassing for my family that their daughter was a criminal, something like that. But that was the perception. But that was also a blessing when I look back, because that is when now the international NGOs heard about our case, because now the local newspapers started writing that there is an environmental activist in Kenya who has been arrested and arraigned in court because she was speaking about this poor community. So for me at that time it was like a very low moment, but looking back it was a good thing, because that is when we actually started creating networks. That's when the first people, the Frontline Defenders group in Ireland, approached us and said, we want to work with you, we want to assist you, do you have a lawyer? And then Human Rights Watch came, and so other organizations started coming and offering to partner with us in 2012. So that is the kind of network that we started creating from that time.
When you look back, so how would you evaluate the importance of media coverage in your fight?
Oh my, media has been our only tool actually from the beginning. Media has been our first line of defense, for example. I will give you examples of sometimes one of the ladies who has been very vocal working with me in the community, her name is Anastasia, that there's a time that some of the people who are behind the smelter are local politicians. So they actually ordered the policemen to go and raid her house at night because they said they were suspecting that she had some illegal things inside her house. This lady is a pastor, so there is nothing like anything that would be in her house. When she called me, I could not reach her because I had also run away because of I had been attacked by thugs and run away to a different town to live there. So I could not reach her. I was afraid. So what I did is I called the media people and I gave them the number of the policemen who are in charge of this case and the area chief. And so the media people called them and said, we are on our way, we want to cover that story. We are told that you are raiding certain houses in this community. And this is how they stopped. The police just turned around and left her house. So media has been a very major partner for us, the local media, but also international media, because you find that some of the stories that we try to highlight were getting blockages because some of these industries, they give a lot of money to the media people in terms of advertising revenue and things like that, and they don't want to jeopardize. So sometimes when the local media were not able to get our story through, the international media came in and they aired our stories. So in that way, the media has really, really been a major tool for our campaign. And even last year, early this year, in February, we did a media training for 10 media, the main media houses in Kenya, both print and electronic. We had some people from the radio, from newspaper and TV stations that we were talking to and telling them why we are doing this work and why we needed their support, which from there we got one media house that did a very excellent expose about the Owino-Uhuru community that actually brought a major breakthrough in the Kenyan systems.
Very often when this kind of environmental conflicts start rising, it's the citizens, they need to find the proof that it's happening. So you have been organizing blood testing for children and all kinds of stuff. How have you been gathering all this kind of evidence?
When we started in 2009, the first 3 blood tests that I did, I paid from my own pocket for the first 3 children. And we thought this would help. But we gave this to my sons and 3 other children. But we gave this to our NEMA and public health departments, but we got no response. So we thought maybe that they needed more evidence. Okay, so we started first from the community itself. Everyone was paying 100 shillings for evidence gathering so that we could test the soil, test the water, test the vegetation, and also do more blood tests in the community. So actually from the community itself, we collected, not all of them paid, but at least I know 200 people paid, and everyone was giving 100 shillings. And then some of the money came from me, some came from my friends. That is how we started gathering money to do more research on the issues. But we did not get any research funding. Actually, the organizations that came in to do some tests last year, the first was a media house that was working with us. We told them that there is need to do more blood tests in the community, and they did 50 blood tests more. And then after that, because of the expose now, the state also came in and they've tested 200 more people. 250 actually from the community. So at first it was up to us to find ways to actually prove that something was wrong in the community, which is wrong because the Constitution of Kenya actually does not put the burden of proof on the community. But in this case, the burden of proof was put on us to actually prove that something was going wrong, which is not supposed to be that way.
So last year the metal refinery was closed, but still the injustice for the ordinary people remains. So what do you think can be done next?
In environment governance in Kenya, in the systems, just having worked for these 5 years representing the communities, because before I was working representing the corporates and the multinationals, and it was very easy. But now working for the communities, the poor people, I realized that within the systems there are real structural gaps that need to be addressed. So we are working to address issues of access to information, access to participation, and issues of access to justice. And before you get justice, there has to be accountability, okay? People have to own up. The media have really worked with us on the issue of accountability by helping us to name and shame some of the people who are behind this injustice. It's very unfortunate that the same people are also running to court to try and sue the same people who are trying to highlight these issues. So the issue of accountability is still very strange to many African countries, and that is why many people get away with a lot of human rights violations in Africa, because people are afraid to name them. It's dangerous to name some of these people. I know it's very dangerous in our case, for example. When I got back home from the US, I had to run to the police with some of the community members who were getting people following them. They were getting threats. Anastasia had to leave her house at night and run because they sent some gangs to her house, okay? So I had to run to the police to start writing statements that my people are in danger, my people need protection. So part of this whole process is to ensure accountability and justice. Why did the system fail these people for 5 years? Why did they go through all this injustice? Why did we have to lose so many babies? We had to lose, some mothers had to lose their wombs. We had to get people dying in the community. Why did the government not act for 5 years? Who were the people responsible? That is a major, major thing for us and for the community. And also to get justice, because we need the ground cleaned. Much as they've shut down the smelter, the soil is still polluted, the river is still polluted, okay? The air, much as the emissions are not coming up, but from the dust, the air is still not clean. So we need remediation of the whole area to be cleaned up, but we also need the people in the community who have suffered to be compensated fully for all the damages they've gone through. As I mentioned, some were environmental. For example, the roofing iron sheets were corroding because of the acid rain. Some lost their livestock. The cattle drank from the river and they died. The small animals like chickens that they were depending on to substitute their meals and some of their income died. The people who had fish pond, the fish died. So we need accountability for what happened, and we need justice for the community.
Who do you think should be prepared to be responsible for the compensation? Is it more the state of Kenya or a company that has owners here and there?
For me, the person who has the biggest blame is not the owners, it is the state. We are suing both the company directors and the state. But to me, it is the state that was responsible for bringing them into the country. They were brought under an incentive program, which means that it is a Kenyan agency that went to look for these people and told them there is opportunities in Kenya, come. And they are the same people who gave them the place, this is where you can invest. And then they issued them licenses to start operating in that area. And then after they issued them licenses, they ignored all the complaints that were coming from the community for 5 years. So much as, yes, the industrialists were wrong, the metal refinery, yes, the member of parliament was wrong, the one who invested in that and helped in protecting this company for all these years. But the whole system in the state, in environmental governance, public health, failed the people of Owino-Uhurussa, and they have to give justice to the community for their failures.
If you were to give advice to people who are facing similar kinds of threats and injustice in their own lives, what would you say to them?
First of all, you need to understand, for example, in the African context, it's very difficult to differentiate between the state and these corporates. They usually act in unison. So the first thing that the communities must understand that it's their own fight, and they must stand up and they must push hard to get justice. They cannot give up. It's not easy, but they must do it, not only for themselves, but for their children and their children's children, for the ecosystems, so that we can have another generation after us, and so that we don't just kill everything around us in the name of making profit. It's very hard in Africa, I know. Many activists in Africa are facing threats when they stand up against these corporates, but they cannot give up. They cannot give up. They must continue to push and fight until they get justice. It can be done because the Owino-Uhurussa community has done it.
Do you see in the future that it would be realistic in Kenya to have processes called environmental mediation, so that when this kind of conflicts start to escalate, that there would be some kind of a process to stop it in the beginning?
I don't know if Kenya is developed enough to be able to handle mediation, because in 2009, when this whole thing began, there is a tribunal in Kenya that is supposed to mediate such kind of things. They did a report for us which they hid until 2012 when we met in a forum in UNEP, and we attacked them openly on the forum and said, you did a report and you hid it. That is when they sent it to us, okay? So Kenya has not grown up to be able to give its own people like access to information and access to participation to be able to handle mediation, because mediation needs good faith on both parties. The government must be open to give relevant information to the people so that the people will trust the systems. But as long as information is hidden, participation is limited, then how will the people trust the system? So maybe if we continue to work on the structural issues within environmental governance in Kenya, if those improve, if we manage to pass all the policies that we are pushing for, then maybe the tribunal would work in Africa, but not now.
What is the next big target? Is it now the legal process and getting a decision about compensation?
It's yes, the next big target is going to court, but we are not only going to court because we want compensation. No, we are going to court, as I explained, because we need this to be highlighted, that this was a failure on the part of the state, and because this is not only happening to one community in Kenya. After the expose that was done by KTN in Kenya, 17 other communities rose up and said we are going through the same thing. And so the National Environment Management Authority started running around the country shutting down some of these industries. Okay? You see, if we had not done this, then these communities would still be suffering. So why we are going to court is because we want to create a precedent for all these other communities to follow. That as long as you come to Kenya and you pollute, the people will hold you accountable. Maybe this will reduce the incidences we are having, because we cannot trust the system, environmental governance system in Kenya anymore. NEMA has failed Kenyans more over and over again, and we cannot trust NEMA anymore.
Are there networks or organizations or individual people that you would like to join your fight at this point?
Oh yes. Working alone always is it's more dangerous, it's more costly. And so in Kenya we are trying to come up with a network of environmental rights defenders. And even when we are taking the case to court, much as a lot of, actually we as an organization are funding the project through the Goldman Environmental Prize, but we are not taking the case as Center for Justice. We are taking the case as an environmental community in Kenya. We also need, for example, my dear friend Heta from Finland is assisting us a lot in terms of coming up with understanding what international instruments we can refer to in the local context that will be able to assist us in the case. So we need help from international bodies who have litigated on issues of environment, because it's very new for Kenyans. So we need that partnership to understand where we are going, and so that we actually win this case. We want to win this case. But also we need support also to run our programs as an organization. We are still very young. We have a lot of projects. Many communities, more than we even thought, are coming to our offices and bringing complaints, and we need to be able to handle them. We need to empower communities to understand their rights first of all, and then stand up and defend their rights and demand their rights, because unfortunately for us in Africa, you are not given your rights. You have to stand up and demand them before you get them. Yes.
So in 5 years' time, what would you like to have achieved in your community and in your personal life?
In 5 years' time, when you talk of time, I think of the younger generations that are coming up. We have what we are calling the 4K clubs in Kenya, where we are working with school children. have 200 kids that are in the program, and we are just giving them an alternative education to what they're learning in school. We are teaching them about their environment, about human rights, the need to preserve positive culture and get rid of negative culture in Kenya. But in 5 years, as an organization, I want us to go to a point where we'll help put in place policies that will make it harder for people to violate the environment in Kenya. We want communities that are more empowered to understand their rights and demand them. And we want to see a state or a government that actually respects the rights of the people. We want to see a Kenya that will give people access to information, that will allow people to participate in decision making, actually participate and not just have it on paper, but real participation from the people of Kenya. So in 5 years, that is what I hope to see. Unfortunately, it might not happen as fast as that, but that is what I would like to see. On a personal level, I want to go back to school and understand my work better, because I did not study anything to do with environment or human rights. So I want to have gone back to school and empowered myself more so that I can help the communities even better.